heavily moused and had blonde streaks. It occurred to Sam that he was gay. This seemed appropriate. Gays thought a lot about sex. This was necessary because they had to decide that they were gay. It was like he had now joined the sex club, where people did more than talk or think about it. They had it, did it, rolled around in it, ground against one another in airplane bathrooms, and got winked at as they emerged. "I have a weird favor to ask you," he said when they were again seated. "Anything you want," she said. "It's just so I can remember this experience," he said, which he thought was as delicate a way as putting it that it was both true and that would also satisfy this sudden primal need, which was proof. She listened to his request and tilted her head as though to look at him from a new angle. What did she see? He held a frozen grin. The grin of a shoplifter at the moment a security guard asks, "Excuse me, can you show me what is in your bag?" "Of course, honey," she said after a moment. She took his journal and wrote feverishly with her own pen while the plane descended. Her hair blocked his view of the page. "Don't read this till we split ways," she said, handing it back. "Promise?" He promised. The plane was landing. The static hum of noise that had created a soft muffling between them, a kind of privacy, became louder. His ears were blocked, and they sat beside each other, gathering themselves up to say goodbye. He was going to be met by Jason and was already giddy at the thought of sharing this recent development. The first thing he did was go to the bathroom, pee, and stare briefly at his dick to make sure it didn't look diseased. It looked like it always did, but different. Alone, disease-free, and no longer a virgin. He stared at himself in the mirror for a few moments and then threw his arms up like a boxer who has just knocked out his opponent. He didn't make a sound. It was a pantomime of joy. He wanted to read his journal right there, but he didn't want to sit on a toilet like a fugitive. So he went out and found a bench near baggage claim to read what she had written before he got in the car. Just as he reached into his bag, he saw her, waiting there with everyone for the baggage carousel to start moving. Looking dumpy and unremarkable, and he now thought, though he hadn't before, a bit used. He'd been awakened to the potential for sex in any situation. He studied her for clues as to how he might discern these underlying tendencies in other women. But this errand, which he processed while he stared, was interrupted and overruled by another feeling. A really sad kind of feeling that came with seeing her standing there alone, waiting for the baggage carousel to start, with no one there to pick her bag up. He imagined that the bag would be a little too heavy for her, and she would drag it off the carousel, and then stand there for a minute, recuperating. Just then her head swiveled casually and her eyes locked on him, looking at her. A smile appeared on her face. It was knowing and confident somehow, and he felt stupid for all the pity he'd just been feeling, and a little embarrassed to have been caught staring. He stood up and waved. He was sure, for some reason, that she had written her number down in his journal. He had no intention of ever calling it, but he liked that he had it. It made turning away from her with a wave and walking away much easier. Years later, when he told this story to girlfriends or at the wedding, and everyone got so amused, it insulted his memory of the whole thing, which is why he could never get to the end of the story. Everything got so abstract as soon as they parted. The excitement of their connection didn't translate into real life, and it didn't translate at all into his grown-up life, and yet he felt it still. Or maybe it had to do with the feeling of being calmed somehow, that there was something off about it all in a way he couldn't quite see at the time. That fleeting feeling he had in the bathroom of this being a con, the worry that the con and real life were intermingled, a feeling that was always provoked by that amusement that greeted his attempts at telling the story and kept him from getting to the end. Jason was there at the airport with a huge grin, arms outstretched, wild blonde hair tamed a bit, but still brittle-like, a Brillo pad. Sam always marveled that he was related to this Brillo pad hair. They clapped backs and rushed to the car. An El Camino, a car of pure criminality, Sam thought with admiration. And on the way, Sam kept saying he had the most amazing news. "No fucking way, dude," said Jason when Sam spat it out at last. "In the friggin' bathroom? That is so awesome. You're kidding me, right?" "I'm not kidding. I knew you would say that. I have proof." I believe you, kid. Crazy shit happens with babes all the time. They are dying for it. That's what most people don't understand. There was this one time, I want to show you the proof, said Sam. He wasn't ready to yield the floor just yet. Don't show me no disgusting tissue or something. She wrote in my journal. I made her write it in my journal right here. You keep a journal? You gotta be careful about that. I haven't even read it yet. Let me read it out loud. Beautiful boy, you have been a delicious dream, he began. Get the fuck out of here, said Jason. You wrote that yourself. Dude, is this my handwriting? I'm driving, kid. I can't be reading your journal. Sam looked back at the page. There, right below his most recent entry. I'm on a ski lift. It's fucking cold. Snow last night. Fucking powder. I'm going to kill. The Stockwells and the whole chalet scene is getting me down. But 2 blonde girls and their mom checked in last night with about 1,000 suitcases and a deviant, after which he dropped the pen. There was her handwriting. It had round letters, which in their roundness suggested that with only a little effort they could have been turned into an illustration of a bunny or something else cuddly and nice. There was something about it that reminded him of the other Vicky. It also had a hopefulness to it that made him uncomfortable. He drowned these feelings with the sound of his own voice. Beautiful boy, he began again, reading loudly. You have been a delicious dream, as though you were an angel sent to enter my thoughts and draw them out for me to see in the plain light of day, or this airplane, what a shambles my life has become, and how much nicer and more fun it could be. My dad used to beat me and my husband kicked the shit out of me just before I left D.C. I was in such a low place when I got on this plane, but it was a gift to talk to you, and it was a gift what we had together in that little bathroom, the Mile High Club. I hope I didn't corrupt you, you innocent, beautiful boy. That was really and truly the most beautiful and tender and deep sexual experience I ever had. Thank you. Sam closed his journal. He stared out the window, and a creeping exhaustion began to overtake him. It wasn't until later that he realized that she didn't leave her number. And so the remaining lingering image, like when you look at a bright light and then close your eyes, was not the wild bouncing in the skanky bathroom and the big tits in his face and his huge explosion. It wasn't the image of her leaning towards him after getting that second Bloody Mary and starting to look at him as though every word that popped out of his mouth was the perfect word, and it was guiding him down a path of an unseen maze towards a prize. What stayed with him was the image of her at the baggage carousel, waiting for it to start, and then it lurching into motion, and starting to snake around and around without anything yet on it, which was weird, because that was an event he hadn't even been there to see. That's the baggage carousel. Well, that went on for a while, but I'm told I'm supposed to ask for questions. I'm happy to answer.